What fun. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
So, I'm all right. Thank you. This is a new thing. We're doing a new thing. It's a new season. This is Nick.
Hello.
Nick, what's your last name?
My last name is Lewis.
So
Nicholas
Nick
Lewis, yeah.
And I'm Nicholas Burtner. And today we got called Nick Squared, which is quite interesting.
Very fitting, yeah.
But, Nick, for a long time I've been wanting to do something like this, right? So you're somewhat new to permaculture,
Yes,
right?
very new, yeah.
But in, 3-4 weeks, you're going to be graduating Texas A&M with a degree in...
Yeah, so I'm graduating with the degree in ornamental horticulture. I'm an ag science technology major, so it's a bachelor's in science. Super fun.
There you go, right? He's got a BS. So, so this is going to be interesting because Nick is also pretty deep and into philosophy, and we've now worked on a couple of projects together. We're on a customer project right now, a client project, and Nick just came in at the right time, and I needed some help, and he is rife with questions, and so is everybody. And the bandwidth to put something together to do Q&As is somewhat limited, and I need help in the logistical portions of that, and also help with somebody who can also carry a conversation and chit chat about questions of permaculture. So he literally was right. What were you doing today? Yeah, you were.
Throughout the day, we were shoveling mulch and compost around, and I had my little phone, my little notepad, and every time I was graced with a little question in my head, I'd write it down for you so that I could save it for this experience.
All right, man. So we've kind of laid it out. So it's maybe potentially a consistent deal we're going to do. What are some questions from somebody coming from a horticulture background who is new and passionate about permaculture and has all these questions? And I would imagine even if somebody didn't have a horticulture background, when they're new and they understand, they get that toe in the water, they get lit on fire, because permaculture is one of those things that kind of change your life.
Yeah, yeah.
So lots of questions I'm sure people are going to have, and people can also maybe write questions in where we see this video. And,
for sure.
We can have something where those questions are answered.
Yeah.
Too. So
awesome.
Yeah, man. What's up?
So I guess a great little avenue to start is why permaculture, Burtner? Why did you choose permaculture over some conventional gardening?
So is that question for me personally, or is that like, hey, why would permaculture be more beneficial than something else?
What fascinates it about you? So what drives your passion to create through permaculture as opposed to just slapping some garden beds down and calling it a day?
Oh man, that's okay for me then. So what drives that passion? So there's a number of things for me personally. One is, and it's actually, I'm not going to put them in order, they're just going to come out of importance for me. But one is, I'm somewhat of a lazy gardener, and I don't want to work that hard. And when I see rows and rows and rows of vegetables and crops, I personally get a little intimidated. I like the way they look, but I'm just like, man, it's going to hurt my back. I don't want to work that hard. It's also, the more I know, it's input driven. I have to work very hard at it. So, we'll put the camera over here a minute ago. This is like 6 keyhole beds, like in a mandala shape. They're rather big, and it's for a single lady here and her dog, and so Miss Nancy. So this is perfect for her, and it's efficient. So permaculture gives the set of tools that I've found very efficient for my own kind of, don't want to put in 40 hours a week in my garden.
Right.
So that's at one level. And then another level, it's, like I mentioned a minute ago, it's life-changing. And so gardening is just one aspect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, building houses, working with people,
right?
Climatology, anthropology, right? So when I see that, it's a it's a tangible tool that I can use for my personal ministry.
Okay, yeah.
Which is to love and help people.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's awesome. You said, so permaculture, how can it make things, you were talking about efficiency and also working less. How can we, from a permaculture standpoint, in your view and in your expertise, how can we be, how does permaculture make sense? Because if I'm doing less work, if I'm not putting in 40 hours a week, in what ways am I being more efficient, you know?
It's a great question. So, and let me be clear, I was a little exaggerating with 40 hours. So most people are not going to be putting 40 hours a week in their garden unless they're like maniacs, right? So,
right.
Or it's their business.
Yes. Massive garden.
Which then you'd put in more than 40 hours.
Yeah.
Probably. So works with nature, right? So that's one way, and then also design. So let's talk about working with nature for a second. So in this design here, and in all permaculture gardens that I couldn't imagine me installing a garden that wasn't an ecosystemic design, meaning that I'm going to be working with an ecosystem. So in short, without getting into the weeds of all the details,
sure.
When I'm working with an ecosystem and designing an ecosystem, that means I'm bringing in the beneficial insects, which are pollinators and beneficial insecticidal insects. The plants I'm growing are attracting those. They're also attracting habitat for beneficial wildlife like lizards and toads.
Yeah.
And so all of these are pollinating my vegetables. They're also keeping the pests under control. Typically, I have more pests in my garden than most people, and I have less pest damage. And just the mere fact of all these insects having either a party or Armageddon there, they're dying, they're having frass, they're defecating on the soil, they're creating soil fertility. Right?
Yeah.
And plus the vegetation, all plants are miners of soil, so they're bringing these minerals to the top, and that's going down on the top where you're planting your plants.
Yeah, okay.
So, and you know, I could keep going, but these are working with nature concepts that make my job as the human involved in the gardening much simpler.
Okay, so you have kind of like an interplay that nature's already kind of evolved over the years, right? And then you're just coming in as a human and kind of providing the bumpers that is allowing and channeling kind of that interplay to thrive in your garden setting.
Dude, Nick, that's a good way to put that, right? So it's a framework. So that was your definition of that, and I liked it. It was great. Good job.
Right on. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next question here. We've got like a whole list. So let's see. We went over why permaculture. Now, what is your personal take of your favorite thing about permaculture? Because, like, you know why you're walking in and stepping into the ball game. Like, what is your favorite part of the ball game?
So these are questions to me personally. I thought you were gonna have like how-to questions.
I can make another list.
No, we're good. We're good. Yeah. So for me personally, it's the impact it has on other people's lives.
Okay.
That's probably what juices me up. And maybe that means my love language is like words of affirmation, or like you could see the change. It's a little selfish, but I guess there's no act that's not a little bit selfish, you know?
Yeah.
So I get to help people, and especially if they can't help me back, right? And sometimes they can't help me. Often it's a cultural capital thing. I'm investing into them, and they more than happy investing in me. And nature does the same thing. If you invest into creation, it like takes many investments towards you. It's kind of the design pattern that's in nature. But yeah, Nick, that's really what probably drives me. It's not the efficiency, and it's not working with nature, believe it or not. It's people-centered, and it's I mean, like you. I mean, take yourself for example, right?
Yeah.
I mean, without getting too personal about you, unless you want to, you know, you came at a certain point, and you were having things go on in your life, and then, you know, all of a sudden a couple of weeks go by, and then all of these opportunities opened up for you, right?
Oh yeah.
And so for me, looking from this perspective as a friend, I'm like, how good does that make me feel that I'm able to pour into you, and with all of these tangible things and all the other organizations that are linked with the school.
Yeah.
So that, to be honest with you, that is cherishable for me, you know.
Awesome. That's great. That's awesome. All right, cool. Moving on. So now that we've got like the framework of like what is permaculture, why you like going into it, what's your favorite thing, so we kind of get a like sphere of like, you know, what's driving you into this. I want to move kind of more into like the practical implications of, you know, going into a project. So with that being said, when facing a new project, what are some questions that you commonly ask yourself, you know, before you even, you know, put a shovel into the ground?
Yeah, so, shovel into the ground is like step 70.
Yeah.
Unless you kind of have done this for a while.
Right.
Yeah, so you know, this is a video in itself. I didn't tell you, I'm writing a book. I've been writing a book for a number of years. I've got most of it written. It just needs to be cleaned up and a couple of sections done. And it's called Permaculture Consulting.
Okay.
So, and it's my model of how to like do it. So,
right on.
So the big parts of, the big 5 steps is like consultation, and that has multiple things. Then from consultation, design. From design, budgeting, which those two can go back and forth. From budgeting, planning, strategic planning for install, and then install after that, right?
Okay.
So it's like, it kind of goes in that order.
Right.
So that's the big framework. And so to get a little bit more into your question, let's go just to consulting. And consulting has 2, potentially optionally 3 things about it, right? So one is the personal interview or the personal assessment, personal inventory / assessment, and then the landscape inventory / assessment. So landscape assessment, landscape inventories, I would be here for 3 hours if we were going to go into that. But you know, there's like 10 categories that I'm looking at, from restrictions on what the city or state or whatever is telling you to do, to topography, to the climate, to soil, to wildlife, all those things, right?
Okay.
It's way too long to kind of look
into
this.
Long list of things.
And then even the personal inventory is too long, but I can give you the kind of the bullet points. It's not as long as the landscape assessment. So there's some questions you got to ask, and that's what you're getting at. What are these questions? So the question to ask yourself is something like, one is, how much realistic time do I have to do 2 things: to install the project and to maintain the project?
Okay.
So if you're looking at this and you're going, you know, I have these plans to do 40-acre food forests, and you have 2 hours a week that you can dedicate, like that alone, that creates a problem that needs to be flushed out, so we can create a design based on that.
Totally,
right?
totally.
So how much realistic time? If you don't have the time, and maybe you do have the time, do you have the skill? If you don't have the skill, is there a place to learn the skill that's close by or not close by? And if not, is there somebody with the skills that you can either hire or barter or trade with?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So time, skills, and then the things with the skills, and then budgeting, obviously the finances. And so, and when it comes to capital, this is where our friend Jeremy, he should come here with us too and talk about the different forms of capital, because it's not always financial, right? There's multiple ways. I mean, even with Nancy here, part of the agreement was like, hey, we had a bunch of tools, and so you know the tools kind of got traded through. So looking at those big items, right? Time, skill, finances, and then also going, okay. What are and even before that, so those are 3 questions to ask before that, but there's 2 things that supersede that. And the first one is, what are your goals? Really, what do you want? Do you know how many people, I can't move forward with somebody in any kind of work, in almost anything, unless you know what you want.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even in relationships, like, what do you want? You know, so and I'm, you know, and it's my job as a I almost went into marriage counseling. So it's my job as a permaculturist to go, okay, how can I help her or him get what they want, and also work within the confines of the principles and ethics of permaculture.
Okay.
Well, hold on. And then after goals, it's desires. And that's all the techniques you hear about: food forest, chicken tractors, you know, mandala garden, whatever, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot there. There's a lot.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. So my next question kind of for you was, what are the challenges you face going into these, like when you're implementing the design? And you kind of answered it. You have your time, your finance, you have your goals going into the project, and all of these can be seen as kind of like challenges, in the wake to be overcome as you're approaching the project. In more terms of like implementation, is there any challenges that are kind of out of the box that one might not really think about when they're actually creating a permaculture site? Of course, like considering the climatic conditions and the watershed on their property might be one form of challenge, but is there something that like, people don't necessarily think about when they're making their gardens?
So there's two things here. That's why you do a landscape inventory and assessment, right?
Okay.
So for example, on this site, it might look like there's soil, but there's literally limestone rock, and then
really not rock.
And then the developers like put sod down.
Yes.
And that's the only soil that's here is the sod the soil that came with the sod.
Yes.
So I wouldn't have known that if I got here, if I didn't ask questions with Nancy, the homeowner, or doing an assessment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason you do, because there's no way to know everything. And,
right.
And there's the other thing is you've got to be somewhat okay not knowing everything.
Right. Yeah.
And you know as much as you can if you want to do a good job. And in my shoes, right? So if I'm helping other people, people are making decisions based on what I'm saying and the advice I'm giving. So I want to do my homework. I want to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a homeowner and it's just a garden, it's a little bit different, right? I just taught a class in East Texas the other day, and we kind of made a cap. It's like, just go out and do it. But if like maybe, whatever your level is, maybe it's 5K. If it's going to cost you more than 5K, hire somebody, do your diligence, like look at the places where you can make an error.
Okay.
So that's one way to do it. And then another kind of looking overall is, like I'd said, be okay with not knowing and be okay with somewhat making mistakes. That's a weird way to answer that question.
Okay.
But it's not if you kind of take a larger look at it.
Sure.
Like, you're not going to get everything right.
Right.
It's just not possible. There's no permaculture design or install that takes into consideration everything.
Right.
And we'll add another thing here, and I'm not going to go into it, but part of the strategic planning, which nobody talks about, is the logistical issues with the install, or potential issues. Like here, this is a gated backyard, and we couldn't rent like a small skid steer to go back and forth. The HOA in the front wouldn't allow us to just dump 30 yards of mulch, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to figure that out?
Right.
Those things aren't addressed in the design.
Right.
They're addressed closer to the installation.
Yeah.
So, but that's another kind of set of challenges to kind of look at.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
We'll do one more. What do you think, man? And it's probably long enough. What is it, getting into 18 minutes?
Well, 18 minutes. Wow.
Sweet.
Time flies. Okay. Okay, I have so many questions here.
Hey,
we honestly could make this like a 45-minute video if we wanted to.
No.
But
maybe we should try to do a max 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because this is a cool thing. We don't have to have this all figured out. It's the first time we're doing it.
Totally.
I don't know. I'm up for like once a week, right?
Sure.
This is a very interesting deal, especially if people are sending in the questions.
Oh yeah.
Get
a little podcast type deal going.
There it is, dude. There it is, Nick. There it is.
Right on, dude. Okay, so I just want to, since this is the first like kind of entry into this, and we're gearing this towards people that might be, first. Maybe permaculture, they just heard it yesterday from a friend and they're looking up this video and they're like, I need to get my questions answered by the professionals, I feel like a great question to kind of leave off on is, for anybody looking to get into permaculture, already in permaculture, has been doing permaculture maybe for 5 years, or just heard the word, maybe they don't even know about permaculture. What is one piece of advice, if you had one or maybe two pieces of advice that you could provide to an individual that is looking to either enter the field or has just heard about it, what would you tell them?
Okay, so for clarification, enter the field professionally or
as a hobby.
So like a homeowner,
Sure.
or landowner, or somebody doing something.
Yes.
Well, it's going to be the opposite of what I just said a minute ago. It's just go and learn and do it.
Okay.
And then
go with the flow.
Well, hold on. There's a category of that person. I'm this person too. It's called I was going to name this category of person a doer, but it's not. It's a redoer. Okay. Because you start doing something and then you realize that it didn't work.
Yeah.
So you redo it. So at that moment, take a permaculture design course.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So I would have went the other way, but nobody listens to that advice. So that's actually another thing. Get some education, and you can do that at a very easy level in a permaculture design course. And then you can start making small plans. But so there's pros and cons of both ways. If you just go out and do it, you're going to redo it, and you're going to spend more money.
Sure.
But you're going to know what you're doing well, and then you're going to absorb and value the education more then, right? But if you start with education, the problem that could happen is you get over analytical, and then best becomes the enemy of good, and also overanalyzation becomes the enemy of execution.
Okay.
So you're not working.
Gotcha.
So right, it's kind of
there's like a balance that's to be found between these two. Okay. Yeah, right on.
Exactly.
Well, you heard it from the professionals. You need an education, and you're in the Dallas area, or even online, right? They can access this from wherever. The School of Permaculture. Just a little plug.
There it is, man.
There it is.
That's awesome, dude. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, bless you guys.